holding it down on the football playbook. Not too often we get a chance to do that. But as you know, each and every week, Wednesday, we get a chance to chop it up with Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire USA Today. Good morning, Glenn. How are we?
Rick, how you doing this morning? Great.
Yeah, I'm doing all right, man. We lost one of our football brethren this morning, Franco Harris, and definitely resonates with the football community. So other than that, doing okay. Last week we checked in with you. I think you were about 70% done with the Christmas shopping in the Erby residence. Are we locked up, sealed and dealed?
Yeah, I'm done. Got a big week this week, so had to get that done and over with, man.
It is a little bit of a big week. I heard something was happening on Christmas Eve. Now, Micah Parsons really ignited the fire, I think, 2 weeks ago with building up the drama, and it made for a lot of yesterday there was something in the water in the chat room over here. I said, what is it, a full moon? No, I said it's Dallas week. So a lot of bantering between the fan base. But from a media perspective, some of the lust on this game, some of the glitter is kind of fallen off, especially with now the Eagles and Cowboys, Jalen Hurts injury. He may not suit up. I saw the press conferences yesterday. I'm sure you did. What does Glenn Erby's gut check tell him about Hurts' status for the upcoming matchup?
I don't expect him to play. I think he did the same thing last year prior to the Jets game, and I think that's just about how he approaches the week, how he prepares. But the expectation is Gardner Minshew will play. He'll have Dallas Goedert available, a boatload of weapons. So everything will go, it'll be the normal, pitch and catch, probably, 70% less RPO, thankfully. But, you'll have Miles Sanders get his carry. So everything should work out.
Yeah, and you know what? The timing really couldn't – I don't want to say – couldn't have been better, but you talk about Gardner Minshew is going to jump back in the saddle, and he's riding an emotional roller coaster. He gave a eulogy, I heard yesterday, at his former head coach Mike Leach's funeral, which was very well attended. I saw Lincoln Riley, Bob Stoops, Will Rogers is his current quarterback there at Mississippi State, and of course Mike Leach passed away in Jackson, Mississippi earlier this week. But Minshew, under the guidance of Mike Leach, I mean, he could be in for a big, big day here against the Cowgirls.
I mean, it's essentially the day he's been waiting for. He's going to be a free agent. Howie Roseman did a good job of keeping him, not dealing him at the trade deadline or anything like that. So it's a huge game for him. It's a primetime opportunity to show, 12 or 13 teams next year looking for a quarterback or a stopgap that, he can be the guy with weapons around him. So I think he'll take full advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, 30 career starts, 6,000 yards passing, I think 41 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. You could argue Gardner Minshew, as good as it gets in terms of being a backup signal caller, but he started, I think 41 games, 30 starts, many of those for the Jacksonville Jaguars, so not a lot of W's, but you're right. Like Sirianni, even back in training camp, I'm sure he had offers from quarterback-needy teams sniffing around Gardner Minshew, and they held on to him for this exact reason, correct?
Correct, without a doubt. I mean, it's probably 6 or 7 teams in the league right now that might have better records or playoff opportunities if they had a guy like him on his team. So you give him a running back, you give him a solid offensive line, something you didn't have in Jacksonville, 2 outstanding wide receivers, and outstanding tight end that he actually has a good connection with, and everything sets up for a great Saturday evening.
Yeah, I saw Dallas Goedert activated from the IR, and I know they had an open roster spot, Aaron Sippis, that they didn't use, so nobody got demoted, nobody got released. Dallas Goedert activated. Ironically enough, the same officiating crew is on this game that was in that face mask debacle game, but how much of a role will Goedert have? What are you hearing? Is he a full go? Will he be on a snap count? What can we anticipate?
I think with the Tuesday activation, he's a full go. I think it was a situation where you really didn't want to risk him in the cold weather, in situations like that with the shoulder injury. So I think he's a full go. He'll probably be a little rusty, but I think, like we talked about, him and Minshew have a good rapport. Goddard's first 2 touchdown game came with Minshew targeting him, so I think he'll target him early and often. So I think it's a situation where he'll open up the middle, he'll open up the passing game even more, and he'll likely open up running lanes for Miles Sanders. So it'll be a good situation.
You mentioned Miles Sanders. I don't know if you caught this. It hasn't been heavily reported, but Nick Sirianni chewed his ass out on the sideline during that Bears game. He came over to the sideline and Sirianni chewed him out for not running too hard. And people are wondering why Miles Sanders didn't touch the ball more against the Chicago Bears. Well, he put the ball on the carpet. He got chewed out by his head coach. Kenny Gainwell actually played 29 reps to Miles Sanders 40. How do you kind of see that backfield situation moving forward now?
I mean, I think it's still Miles's backfield. I think, Sirianni has to yell at himself and Shane Steichen as well, if that's the case. I wrote the other day, Sanders went 24 minutes, almost 30 minutes without a carry. So I'm not sure you can really get upset about the fact that he's not running hard if he didn't get his first carry until midway through the second quarter. So I understand, you want him to run hard and things of that nature, but you have to give him the opportunity to run hard and run downhill. I think Saturday sets up for an opportunity where he gets to showcase his ability on the road, in decent weather indoors. So I think he'll be the bell cow back. I think you'll see Gainwell in the dual threat role, but this is Sanders' team, and this team is only going to go deep in the playoffs if he's an established and firm threat.
Yeah, and I see, it's been a big topic this week. Like, oh, the play calling in the first half was atrocious. Miles Sanders didn't touch the ball. I mean, I keep looking at my stat sheet. The Eagles only had 7 plays in the first half. I mean, it's a small sample size. I think people are underestimating the plan of attack. Like, the Bears came out with the same blueprint as the Washington Commanders, and they didn't let the Eagles touch the ball in the first half. Do you feel like the criticism Shane Steichen is suddenly facing is warranted?
Somewhat. I mean, I understand that the opportunities in the passing game were there, but then it has to be a situation where if the throws aren't there, then Hurts has to throw the ball away. Now we have the situation where 12 or 13 of his runs were just designed runs. So they weren't scrambles, they weren't anything like that. So even if they were done in an RPO situation, whether it's Gainwell, Boston Scott, at some point there has to be someone else to carry the ball besides him. He can't be taking these shots. We've had this conversation before, and you're going to see linebackers, safeties, and other guys now try to load up when they tackle him. So it's a cause for concern. I think it's the blame. Everyone can shoulder the blame, but it's a situation where the run-pass ratio has to get better and it has to be more efficient.
Yeah, it's probably time to scrap the screen pass to Quez Watkins as well. We can take that out of the playbook. But let me ask you this then, Glenn. To me, Shane Steichen is one of the hottest coordinator names. He's a head coach candidate. With this Jalen Hurts injury, in a way, it's an opportunity for him to kind of showcase his diversity, his ability to adapt and adjust to a more traditional pocket passer. What a better opportunity to do it. And oh, by the way, most likely the most watched game of the entire NFL regular season, Eagles, Cowboys, Christmas Eve. This is a showcase game for Shane Steichen, isn't it?
I think it's a showcase game for both coordinators, but I think for him, it's the opportunity, like we talked about, a good run-pass ratio, a good percentage of runs that mean something. Even if they're not getting good gains on the runs, you still want to make the Cowboys respect your rushing attack. You still want to make Micah Parsons do more than just be a rusher. So I think from that standpoint, it's an opportunity for him to show how versatile his package could be with the quarterback, because the team he goes to probably won't have a Jalen Hurts type of quarterback. So it's an opportunity to show that he can work with the drop back passer as well. Yes.
You mentioned Micah Parsons, public enemy number one. I saw him show up on the injury report, I think, with an illness. I don't believe he practiced yesterday. I know Mike McCarthy said he's a competitor. He's not very worried, but what are your thoughts with Micah Parsons? I know he was kind of moving back and forth on both sides last time they played the Eagles. Do you kind of think he'll be a moving chess piece on Saturday? And will he have a greater impact? Because, my man, Micah was nowhere to be found in that first half until Lane Johnson was taken out of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think his best shot for success would be to slide over to that other side when you really want to do it. You really want to have him do what he does. You want to rush him against Mailata. You want to have him in the gap with Landon Dickerson. And I think from that point, he can have success. I think we've established he can't really do anything with Lane Johnson, and most people can't. So I think from that standpoint, if you want to get him involved in the game as a pass rusher, you put him on with Mailata, you let those two go at it, and you see what you can get.
All right, talking to Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire USA today, chopping it up, breaking it down here on the Football Playbook like he does each and every Wednesday. We mentioned Shane Steichen, but Jonathan Gannon is also a very hot coordinator name. And I would argue, Glenn, to me, I think they've both done an incredible job. I think Jonathan Gannon has done a slightly better job, and here's why. Because it's one thing to go and acquire all these big names, right? You go out, you make the splash signing in Hassan Reddick, you bring in Kaiser White, you scoop up James Bradbury before the season, you pull off a trade for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. It all looks great on paper. And we talked about it, I think, early on in the season with the Dream Team. And hey, you got all these glitz and glamour names, but it's another thing to be said to blend all those parts and make it all work together. And man, the sack pack was at it again. 6 sacks, 3 straight games. I think you got to go back to 1997. 6-0 now on the road. They're road warriors. People talking about, hey, the Eagles can't beat nobody. They're the only NFL team that went and did that. They're 6-0 in 1-score games. They've been battle tested. They've won close games. They've done that. But at the end of the day, right? And Jimmy Johnson, who was a guest on yesterday's programming here on the network, he said he got a chance to go up to when the Dolphins and Eagles scrimmaged or had that joint practice. I think one of them was canceled, right? They only had one. He said he made that trek because he's down in Florida. He said, man, the depth of the Eagles inside the trenches, both on the offensive line and defensive line. And granted, this was training camp. This was before they brought in Linville Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. And, man, I'll tell you, man, this is going to go down. If the Eagles run the table, this could go down as one of the all-time historically great defensive lines and, dare I say, defenses.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I think, speaking again, and he's done a good job of enhancing his resume, showing how versatile he can be. I think he did a good job of using, as Bill Parcells like to say, he used the groceries he got. So he did it. He got a good job. We talked earlier about his usage with Reddick. He fixed that. We talked about his usage with Hargrave and Fletcher Cox. He fixed that. So he does a good job of when we feel like he has a bad game or a bad Sunday or Monday afternoon where he comes back, he listens to his players. He's done a great job of getting them to buy into 20, 30 reps per game, knowing that they'll be efficient. You're going to have 5 guys potentially have 10 plus sacks. They're 7 sacks away from breaking the franchise record. So from the name standpoint, it won't go down. But in terms of overall production, the things they've done as a defense is probably one of the best Eagles defenses in franchise history.
55 sacks through 14 games. That is a franchise record. And, the Cowboys are 40. They're second in the NFL with 49, not too far behind. I also saw the Cowboys passed the Eagles for most takeaways, too. I think they're the number 1 in the league now. But, keeping it on that defense, I'll tell you, is Jason Peters going to be suiting up at right tackle this week? Like, he's going to be in for a long, long day.
That hasn't been the confirmation, but I'd assume if you're going to play Tyron Smith at right tackle, then you'll play Peters at left tackle or guard, but they're going to have to do something. So I know Ball is not going to be able to hold it up against Reddick and those guys. So whether it be Smith or Peters, I feel like, he'll definitely play a huge role in that game, but he's definitely a person or a matchup that we can take advantage of as well. So it's something to watch. I think they're going to hold it close to the vest. They're not going to tell us probably until kickoff, but wherever he's at, that's where you should put Josh Sweat, Reddick, Brandon Graham, and those guys.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the turnover differential. I think it's just takeaways. I think the Cowboys have 26 takeaways. Ocam Razor, appreciate all the tidbits you drop, and I'll address them later on. I'll tell you what, I noticed like Jordan Davis barely played. Milton Williams, who's really come into his own, barely played. I think the depth of the defensive line and the offensive line, but this defensive line come the fourth quarter, I think that's going to be the edge that can put the Eagles over the top, even with the Gardner Minshew. I think it's too much for the Cowboys to handle.
Yeah, I think Roseman did a good job of he got Joseph, he got Suh, and then he didn't overreact. And after he got his guys back, cut or release them. So it's a situation where they go 6 or 7 deep at defensive tackle. Davis and Williams are only getting 16 to 13 snaps a game, but that's okay. I think you have a team that's ready to make a Super Bowl run with the veterans intact. And Gannon, like we just talked about, has done a good job of letting the veterans play, easing Jordan Davis back in. He'll have his moment at some point, but it's not a pressurized situation, and it's not a situation where he has to produce.
William Stark in the chat asks about Vander Esch. He's got a neck injury. We'll talk with Kyle Humans from DallasCowboys.com in the second hour of Power. William Stark. Right now we're talking to Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today. Let's talk about the Eagles injuries, Glenn, because we talked about Dallas Goedert. The secondary is a little banged up back there on the back end. I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is eligible to be activated next week.
Correct.
Tell us what you're hearing there. And then also Reed Blankenship sounds like he's going to miss at least another game. What can we expect for a timetable with Reed Blankenship, do you think?
I think with Gardner Johnson, next week he'll be back. So that's a situation where they could have him back for the Saints game. I think he'll definitely want to play that one. Blankenship got a full practice in yesterday, even though it's a walkthrough. So we'll see how the week goes. We know he had a knee sprain. We know that was a 2 or 3 week determination. So he's only missed a game or game and a half. So we'll see how he is. Kayvon Wallace is a little banged up. There are a couple of guys banged up, but overall they're getting healthy at the right time.
All right, 2-part question. Short term, long term, specifically at the safety position. I noticed about 2 weeks ago, they start sliding Josiah Scott, Avonte Maddox back in the single high safety cover 3. Last week, or against the Bears, Maddox took a lot of snaps at safety. How do they game plan against the Cowboys this week? Is it more of the same? And then moving forward, when they do get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back and Reed Blankenship, is that Chauncey and Epps getting all the bulk of the reps like they previously were? Or did Reed Blankenship now play himself into the equation? Give us the short-term, long-term breakdown of that safety spot.
I think a little bit of everything you just talked about. I think Blankenship has definitely earned the right to play. So I think it's a situation where, like some teams do, you maybe can now play with 3 safeties because you know Gardner Johnson is a former slot cornerback, so he can do a little bit in space. I think Avonte Maddox he's in a good situation at safety, and I think it's something to watch going forward in the future. You know, we talked about the 18 to 19 free agents. They're going to have to do something in terms of that position. So Blankenship is a guy that can come back. He may or not be able to re-sign Epps. He may not be able to re-sign Gardner Johnson. So it could be a situation where Maddox slides back there permanently. So that depth works, and it's a situation where they'll use it. They'll put all that in a bottle of gumbo and see what comes out. But I think Blankenship continues to see snaps. And I think it's a situation where you'll see those guys maybe get their snaps reduced so all of them can play.
Interesting. Good points there, because you won't be able to afford all of those guys. And depending if they sign Chauncey Gardner or James Bradbury, could ultimately decide where Avonte Maddox plays next year. Good one there, Glenn. All right, so let's talk about special teams, because I feel like now they're finally starting to find a rhythm in the return game. I'll give Jake Elliott a pass. He missed a field goal again. It was very cold. We'll give him the pass on that. I'm a little bit concerned, though. He's missed a couple extra points. He's missed a couple field goals. We'll see if that pops up again before the end of the regular season. But from a return game standpoint, Boston Scott, and I should mention Josiah Scott, I saw only played 2 snaps last week. So that's a great break glass in case of an emergency player to have on the back burner. Boston Scott, I think, only played 3 snaps at running back because he's now kind of become the primary return man, and he was back at it again. I think he had 3 returns, 100 yards. That kick return to start the second half, to me, was a big momentum game swinging play. And Covey now has starting to kind of come into his own as the punt returner. I now, week 16, am feeling a little bit comfortable with the return game, Glenn. How about you?
Agreed. I think guys know their role now. I think Covey, you have to understand, even though he's a bit older, he is an undrafted rookie. So it took him some time, but he's figuring it out. He's not putting the ball on the ground. And I think that's the biggest reason why he stayed in that role as a punt returner. So that works. Boston Scott fits as a kickoff return guy. He's made 2 big plays back to back. So he's another key person to have on the team. Kern is a solid punter. He has playoff experience, so he'll be fine. I think Jake Elliott will be fine too. So I think all of these guys, including Christian Ellis, getting called up from the practice squad a couple of weeks ago, he's played a huge role. So I think they're finding their guys. They're finding their roles. Sean Bradley, Zeke McPherson, all of those guys. So I think it's a situation where they're starting to gel, and hopefully they'll peak on special teams at the right time.
Yeah, Ellis has been a big boost, and Bradley, I believe, came back last week. So those 2 guys are pretty good. They're ferocious on the Gunners. All right, let me ask you. I had a question for you. I do want to get a score prediction. There was something I wanted to pick your brain about. It'll come back to me, but how do you see this game playing out? I know the Cowboys actually opened up as like a 1 or 2 point favorites. Last time I checked, now it's up to 6. I think Vegas is vastly underestimating the Philadelphia Eagles. How do you see this game playing out on the Christmas Eve affair, Glenn?
I see it being the Eagles win. I know we talked earlier in this year about having to vanquish the champion, having to beat a man, you have to beat the man. So we could talk about beating the team 2 or 3 times in a year, but I think they need this one. I think from a mental standpoint, it's about getting the Cowboys out of here, having Micah Parsons be quiet. So it'll be a situation where Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott still aren't facing off, but from a organizational standpoint, I think they need this one. I think they'll approach it like that. I think it'll be a good mix of running game, a good mix of Minshew, a good mix of AJ Brown. I think the defense shows up, and I think they win going away 38-24.
Oh, high scoring affair. Some fireworks on the Christmas Eve affair. Okay, I like that. Real quickly here. Yes, Caden Ellis is a linebacker for the Saints who's come on strong. He's got a lot of sacks the last couple of weeks. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson not able to be active, Emmanuel, until next week.
Right.
And we might see Reed Blankenship there. Dallas Goedert activated this week. Are there any other injuries we should know about, Glenn?
That's essentially it. I mean, everyone that can come back or that's on IR that can come back is set to come back. So Gardner Johnson is the last to come back. We'll still see what's going on with Hurts. You have your tight end back. You have all your pieces back. So it's a situation. It'll be a week-to-week situation. But in terms of IR, Gardner Johnson's the last big name.
All right, let me get your finger on the pulse real quick from the NFC East around the NFL, a little bit NFC. It's remarkable these odds. 538, who does the political odds? They have Super Bowl odds. I thought it was interesting. Philadelphia is actually favored, 26% chance. They got the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals up there. Surprisingly, they have the Cowboys ahead of the 49ers. I don't see it that way. Now, I get it. There's a lot of algorithm and analytics involved. I'm more about the eye test. I don't know. When I watched the 49ers and that defense, I saw they got Javon Kinlaw back this week too. I get it. I know Deebo Samuel's out. They're playing with their 4th-string quarterback, Brock Purdy. But, man, he was showing some razzle-dazzle there the other night, man. I'll tell you, this 49ers team, to me, is probably the biggest contender. I'll let you weigh in there, and then I'll get your takeaways from that Commanders-Giants game.
No, I agree. I mean, I think, when you start talking about analytics and things like that, it's simply one team has Dak Prescott at quarterback, the other team has a 3rd or 4th stringer at quarterback. But in terms of the eye test, in terms of physicality, in terms of teams, that you feel like can match the Eagles blow for blow, player for player, the 49ers make me more nervous than any team probably in football, let alone the NFC. So I think from that standpoint, and they did what they did last week without Deebo Samuel, he'll be back. They have a strong running game, a stout defense, stout linebackers, all stout safeties, all those things where you have a situation where they can start to match up with AJ Brown, Goddard, Miles Sanders, things of that nature. So I think the 49ers are the team to watch.
Yeah, I would agree there. Now, right here, this NFC East, what a battle. I got to say, the Giants surprised me. I thought the Commanders coming off a bye week, 2 weeks to prepare, riding high. The Giants looked like they were out of gas against the Eagles, and they come back and beat the Commanders. And, man, I'll tell you, this NFC playoff, the Lions are breathing down the neck. Is there a shot, though, that 4 teams still get in from the East, do you think?
The Giants would have to totally just fall off the wagon not to make it. So I think they'll be there. I think they showed some toughness. I think they showed that when Kayvon Thibodeau has his motor going and he wants to play and be a dominant force, they can really make noise on defense. The Commanders, I'm not certain. I know they have another matchup with the Cowboys. Dallas may not be worried about that one. So I think it's a situation where you'll have to watch Seattle, watch Carolina, watch a couple of other teams over the weekend. But there's a good chance all 4 get in, I think.
Yeah, the Giants are going to be in the playoffs. Let me ask you this then. If you had a vote, Brian Daboll or Nick Sirianni for Coach of the Year?
I think Sirianni. I mean, we applaud Daboll. We talked about his team being a year ahead of schedule, but I think in terms of Sirianni and his team not, simply having one bad half, let alone one bad game, being consistent, getting the improvements he's gotten out of Jalen Hurts, getting the improvements on defense, I think it should be Sirianni in a runaway.
All right, last one, Glenn, and we'll get you out of here. This one comes in from the chat room. Good question. What the heck is going on with Marlon Tua Politolo? We haven't heard from him in a while. I think he was hurt earlier in the year. He hasn't been playing. Can you tell us anything there?
He initially went on injured reserve with a meniscus situation. We talked about the depth, and I think that's a situation where he could have been back any day now. He could have been back a couple of weeks ago, but who are you going to sit for him? So I think it's a situation where he'll likely miss the rest of the season unless a really serious injury takes place. But I think in terms of depth, the guys they have out there, they have a good flow going. There's really not a need to bring him back. So I think he's healthy at this point. But in terms of the 50-man roster, the depth chart, he's going to stay out.
All right. Fair enough. He is a fountain of knowledge. Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today. If you want more great content, hit him with the Twitter handle, hit him with the website. Let him know what you got on the flow, Glenn.
Appreciate you, Rick. You can find my work at theeagleswire.usatoday.com. You can find me on social media, The Cover 2 NFL. Like I said, this is a big week, Christmas holiday, Dallas Eagles, playoffs. So we're focused. We're locked in.
Oh, baby. Can't wait to come back next week and do it again with you, Glenn. Hey, Merry Christmas to you and the entire Erby family. Always greatly appreciate the time.
Same, Rick. Merry Christmas to you for the opportunities, everything you've done. Have a great week, man.
For sure. That's Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today. This is the Football Playbook Part 77 edition with Ric Serritella, Wednesday, December 21st. Smash that like button. We're going to take a quick break, pay some bills. When we come back, Kayla Santiago, JAKIB Sports, checks in right here.
Postgame show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Postgame, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.